Hello from London. My name is Andy Calitz of FutureEnergy, and I'm joined by Mary Hemmingsen from Vancouver today, and it's our pleasure to take you on a tour of 9 important solar regions in the world and 30 solar farms to see for ourselves the great progress being made with solar power, but also the challenges.
Good day from sunny Nevada, where, as we can see on this World Photovoltaic Power Potential Map, Nevada is endowed and my usual abode, Vancouver, is not. So let's start our tour of global solar by looking at regions in the world endowed or not with photovoltaic power potential. Where does the sun shine and not? Moving from some of the worst, west coast of Canada where I reside, and northern Europe, UK where Andy resides, as indicated by the blue-green shading, we can move to better and best potential, where we see green at 3 average photovoltaic power potential, and many more parts of the world with 4 highlighted in yellow, and even some parts of the world with red at 5 kilowatt hours per day for 1 kilowatt of installed capacity. Currently, this potential is represented by only 2 terawatts or 2,000 gigawatts of installed capacity, or 2% of world primary energy. Clearly, we have a long way to go in harnessing the potential. Our solar power tour takes us to 9 countries and regions. Traveling from east to west, we start in the electro-state of China. In each country, we look at the contribution of solar power to primary energy and electricity, the solar news headlines, and site visits to key solar installations. So let's begin. Starting with China, who has seized their solar potential beyond their own solar farm and rooftop installations to dominate the solar manufacture and supply chain, let's look at recent headlines. Solar energy provides 2% of primary energy and 6% of electricity in China. This 6% converts China to the global leader in both solar power generation and in China's supply chain and investment in solar manufacturing capacity. In 2024 alone, China installed over 277 gigawatts, achieving total capacity of 887 gigawatts of solar, leading the world and representing as much capacity as the rest of the world together. And China, as the foremost producer of solar panels, also increased their exports of solar panels, with now half going to Europe and accounting for 80% of global solar panels, including all stages of production of silicon wafers, PV cells, and polysilicon. This buildup of manufacturing capacity has created a global glut, which has plummeted prices and depressed opportunities for other countries to counter Chinese dominance in the supply of panels. Also, with the scale-up in solar panel manufacture is the associated manufacturing waste and impact, as well as disposal at end of life, with increasing concerns about production and disposal pollution. In particular, in China, with its coal-powered manufacturing facilities contributing GHGs, while toxic chemicals and heavy metals pollute water sources, and in silicon mining, along with waste disposal degrading local ecosystems. So Andy, let's tour China's solar installations and see some dimensions of this dominance, including impacts of potential overbuild and pollution.
As Mary noted in the headlines, China, with 880 gigawatts of operational solar capacity, has the largest solar capacity in the world. And below us we see the large solar farms in China. Each tile is a solar farm. And large solar farms often located in deserts and the mountains, the only places where land is generally available. Let's visit 4 Chinese solar farms. Nestled in the remote province of Qinghai, between China's largest inland salt lake and one of its highest mountain ranges, lies what we see below us, the Talatan solar power station. Its total area is 600 square kilometers, and what we see below us is 9,000 megawatts of generating capacity. And prior to the station's construction, the region around the solar farm was grappling with desertification, with sandstorms and increasingly arid, barren land. But when Gonghe Hydropower began work on Talatan, The company sowed grass to protect the solar panels from the harsh wind and sandstorms, and nurtured by runoff water from the washing of the solar panels, the grass grew, and once it reached unsustainable levels, Gonghe introduced sheep herded by local farmers to maintain it, and now a flock of hundreds of sheep walk the rows between the solar panels. Below us, the Datong solar farm Xinjiang, with a capacity of 3,000 megawatts, makes it one of the largest solar farms in the world and in China. And as we can see, that it's been built in the mountains to gain access to land, and we can clearly see the sections against all the mountain slopes in the area. The Yanchi solar park in Ningxia province has an impressive array of 2.5 million solar panels, providing 1,000 megawatts of power to the nearby cities. But the solar park also doubles as a goji berry farm, which has helped to turn a once barren desert into a thriving oasis that benefits the local communities. Goji berries are planted under and around the solar panels and then harvested throughout the year. Following the pioneering steps of Japan, China is also developing floating solar photovoltaic farms. And below us we see the Sungrow floating solar farm of 150 megawatts. This is built over a huge surface area of water covering a former coal mine, and developers jokingly refer to this technology as being photovoltaics. The farm does not take up land that would be otherwise used for farms or for manufacturing or for tourism, and the highly mineralized water in the old colliery is unfit for irrigation purposes. But the lower temperatures boost the power efficiency of the solar panels, and the lack of dust means it can stay clean for longer. They use the water to also clean the panels, reducing water evaporation. China boasts 7 of the 10 largest solar panel manufacturers in the world. And below us we can see JA Solar in Beijing, Longi in Xi'an, Suntech in Wuxi, Trina Solar in Jiangzhou, Jinko in Shanghai, and Ryzen down in Ningbo in the south. Global solar PV manufacturing capacity has increasingly moved from Europe and Japan and the United States to China during the past decade, and China has invested more than $50 billion in new PV supply capacity, 10 times more than Europe, and in doing so created more than 300,000 manufacturing jobs across the solar PV chain in the past decade. And as was noted in the headlines today, China's share in all the manufacturing stages of solar panels, such as polysilicon and ingots and wafers and cells and modules, exceed 80%. This is more than double China's share of the global PV demand. And so China has been instrumental in bringing down costs worldwide for solar PV with multiple benefits for the clean energy transition, but now to a point of capacity overbuild, creating a glut of panel supply globally. This glut and the associated depressed prices has added to geopolitical concerns about China's level of geographical concentration in global supply chains and punished the economics of other non-Chinese suppliers. And Europe and the United States remain concerned about China's concentration and have moved to limit reliance in trade barriers and other measures. And Mary, these Chinese panel manufacturing plants are really high-tech, and here we see an assembly by robots of solar panels in a Jinko panel factory.
Next on our tour is a visit to Japan, to touch down on Japan's solar landscape. Here, Japan's photovoltaic market has been growing steadily to account for 5% of primary energy and 10% of electricity. As we see in the headlines, Japan has positioned itself as a leader in solar PV innovation and is looking to grow its industry further amid China dominance tensions. The news headlines speak to Japan being keen to be a solar panel manufacturing force focused on titanium cells, perovskite cells, and ultra-thin cells that allow more flexibility and adaptability in tight urban environments. So given the scarcity of land, Japan continues to also push for floating solar farms on reservoirs and lakes, now representing 60% of global floating solar capacity. Japan is also enhancing its solar panel recycling infrastructure to address the anticipated surge in decommissioned panels expected by the mid-2030s. So let's see this on the ground in Japan.
Below us we see the solar plants from Hokkaido Island in the north in Japan to Kyushu Island in the south. Japan has 90 gigawatts in operation, and as we will see, land for solar use is really expensive and scarce. And the Japanese power grid is also very congested. Let's visit 3 Japanese solar farms. Below us we see some clusters of solar farms, but on the far left we see an example of Japan's leadership in reservoir installation of floating PV on the Yamakura Dam in Chiba near Tokyo, where 51,400 solar panels generate 14 megawatts. The floating design cleverly utilizes the dam's water surface, maximizing land use, and the solar panels act as shade cover, reducing water evaporation from the dam by 13%, and the project employs unique anchoring and tethering systems to secure the panels and withstand typhoons. The Kagoshima mega solar plant in Nanatsujima in Japan started operating already back in 2013 with a capacity of 70 megawatts. And as we can see, it's being built on reclaimed land, and Nanatsujima was one of the first large-scale solar projects in Japan, paving the way for other similar projects. And it utilizes innovative construction techniques with pre-assembled PV modules mounted on lightweight frames to streamline the installation and to reduce cost. And today it incorporates a public tour facility and a solar science museum promoting public awareness about solar energy and its benefits. But Nanatsujima also faces unique challenges from volcanic ash falling from nearby Sakurajima volcano, and the project utilizes special cleaning methods and resilient materials to ensure continued operation and to maintain efficiency. Setouchi Kirei is in Okayama district. It has a capacity of 235 megawatts, uses bifacial solar panels, and it has been integrated beautifully with the surrounding landscape to minimize visual impact and incorporate wildflower meadows, also for pollinator conservation. The park utilized previously unused land and even incorporated sheep grazing management within the panels. Back to you, Mary.
From Japan and China, with their more modest northern limited solar photovoltaic power generation potential, we travel south to sunny Australia, where solar provides 6% of primary energy and 16% of its electricity. Here, the Australian news headlines speak to Australia's ambitions to not only energize the country with solar, but also to monetize further in exports of solar power to Asia in the form of ammonia production and even connected via undersea transmission. In particular, we see the launch of the Australia Solar Sunshot Program, a $1 billion initiative managed by the Australian Renewable Energy Agency to boost solar domestic photovoltaic manufacturing and strengthen local supply chains. Also in the headlines, we see solar revolutionizing the Australia energy market, with the associated challenge of high solar penetration resulting in significant daytime solar generation and causing the infamous duck curve and the associated reliability concerns and the battery installation race we highlighted in our Australia focused tours. So let's see this on the ground in Australia.
As Mary highlighted, Australia has exceptionally good solar potential both in sun and in land availability. And below us we see the largest solar farms in operation, and as we shall see, spread across large sunny hectares of land. Australia has 40 gigawatts of utility scale and rooftop solar in operation. Let's visit 4 Australian solar farms. Below us we see the Western Downs Solar Farm in Queensland, covering 1,500 hectares and with a generating capacity of 460 megawatts. It is currently the largest in Australia, powered by 1 million solar panels with a single axis tracking system to enhance the electricity output by following the sun's movement throughout the day. Australians are very proud to have the highest rooftop solar penetration in the world. So let's visit the town of Tarneit in Victoria, where 23 megawatts of rooftop solar was installed just last year in 2024. And I've marked with a green dot for you the roofs with solar panels. And more than 50% of the houses, as we can see, have rooftop solar. And the popularity of home and rooftop solar is driven by generous government incentives. And as Mary noted in the headlines, to soak up excess rooftop solar generation during peak generation times in and around the middle of the day and discharge during the evenings, local governments are also installing neighbourhood batteries. Our next visit is to Polytec Rooftop Solar in Oberon in New South Wales. Polytec manufactures decorative surfaces for kitchens and bathrooms, and what we see below us is the largest rooftop system in Australia, with 27,000 solar panels generating 10 megawatts and meeting 1/3 of the energy needs of that plant. Our last Australian visit is to Ikea in Adelaide, where rooftop solar generates 1.2 megawatts, complementing the 3.4 megawatt hours of battery for energy storage on site and achieving 70% self-reliance through rooftop solar systems. And the Ikea complex is also supporting additional solar installations as the retailer of solar panels and batteries, and is partnered with Solar Gain for the installation and support across Australia, along with electric vehicle charging stations for customer convenience. As Mary noted in the headlines, Australia seeks to be a renewable energy powerhouse, extending their position as the world's 3rd largest exporter of energy, but this time using solar. 3 influential figures spearhead ambitious initiatives to transform the nation into a renewable energy powerhouse. Andrew Forrest of Fortescue Metals Group, Mike Cannon-Brooks of Atlassian, and Ross Garneau, the former economic advisor to the Australian government and author of Superpower, Australia's Low Carbon Opportunity, have each proposed various strategies. And these plans include massive investments in green hydrogen, in large-scale solar farms and undersea cables to Indonesia and Singapore aimed at exporting clean energy to Asia. And the proposed Australia-Asia or Australia-Singapore power link would be one of the world's largest renewable energy facilities if completed. It comprises solar at Powell Creek with up to 20 gigawatts of capacity, 40 gigawatt hours of battery storage, transmission of 800 kilometers overhead lines to Murrumbidgee near Darwin, an AC and DC battery storage station, and then transmission via a 4,300 kilometer HVDC subsea cable, and in Singapore a converter site and battery storage up to 6 gigawatt supplied to Singapore. This project has received Australian Commonwealth Government approval under the EPBC Act and continues negotiations for Indigenous land use agreements. Time will tell if this can be implemented.
From Australia's rich solar resource and ambitions, we now visit India, also fairly well endowed with solar potential and with ambitions to realize solar power generation, manufacturing, and export growth in a solar industry that currently provides 3% of energy and 6% of electricity. Looking at the headlines, we see references to record, historic, and boom in describing the tracks of solar in India. in record additions of solar capacity of 25 gigawatts, contributing to a historic milestone of 100 gigawatts in total grid and rooftop solar capacity. The boom in surging manufacturing and soaring exports, which are primarily to the US. The boom also fueling a struggle between developers of solar and wind and small landowners for the land. So Andy, let's look at India's solar landscape, including the implications in the struggle for green justice in land use.
Yes, India has very ambitious plans to expand solar. And below us, we see the already completed solar farms in India at each of the tiles. In fact, there are 100 gigawatts in operation. The two crucial issues for India are the battle for land between energy and food and the low levels of employment creation from solar energy in the country with the largest population in the world, but also the largest number of unemployed people in the world. Let's visit 3 Indian solar farms. Below us we see the Bhadla solar park in the Thar Desert in Rajasthan. It has a capacity of 2,245 megawatts, and the Thar Desert is notorious for extreme temperatures and harsh conditions, and Bhadla's success showcases remarkable resilience and innovation in adapting solar technology to very challenging environments. The park utilizes robotic cleaning systems and advanced monitoring technology for efficient panel maintenance and performance optimization. And this automation minimizes manual labor and increases operational efficiency. Bhadla, during the various phases of its construction, generated employment for 25,000 people, both direct and indirectly. And it also serves as a training ground for skilled personnel for the rapidly growing Indian solar industry. Kurnool Solar Farm has a capacity of 1,000 megawatts in Andhra Pradesh, and it has been very controversial. The project required 3,000 acres of land, predominantly from small and marginal farmers, and allegations of unfair compensation, lack of proper consultation, and inadequate rehabilitation and support for displaced families have been raised. India's rapid expansion of solar energy has led to conflicts over land use, as large-scale projects often encroach upon lands vital to local community. But Mary, one of my favorite solar visits in India is to Amritsar, and below us we see this as a single rooftop solar plant with a capacity of 12 megawatt installed at Baba Jaimal Singh of the Radha Somi sect in the country.
From India's ambitious plans to harvest its wind potential, we see even more ambitious plans to invest in solar capacity growth in the Middle East, one of the sunniest regions in the world with abundant solar potential, and converting from hydrocarbon-dominant energy mix, where solar currently supplies 0% of primary energy and only 2% of electricity. The regional headlines in the Middle East speak to this expansion track in Turkey, Oman, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE, and in Iran, and notably in Iran, on the role of the Chinese in its broadened global solar power presence in supporting the financing of solar. So let's see this on the ground in the Middle East.
Below us we see the solar farms in Saudi Arabia, Israel, the UAE, Iran, Iraq, and even Afghanistan. And the solar farms marked with a red marker are not photovoltaic but concentrated solar. There are 21 gigawatts of capacity in operation, with a further 9 gigawatts under construction. Mary, the question, however, remains, is this solar in the dusty deserts a mainstream energy of the future, or is it a side distraction? Let's visit 3 solar farms in the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Oman. For a nation best known for its vast oil resources, the United Arab Emirates, being in the top 5 of large solar farms in the world, might be quite surprising, but the Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum solar park that we see below us covers 76 square kilometers and can generate 2,400 megawatts, and will eventually go to 5,000 megawatts by 2030. Below us we see a mix of photovoltaic panels and concentrated solar power to maximize efficiency and energy output. What was also significant is that phase 5 at a record low bid in terms of price of 1.69 US cents per kilowatt hour for solar projects, very low by world standards. Saudi Arabia aims to generate 50% of its electricity from renewables by 2030 and is heavily investing in solar power. The Sakaka solar farm, located in Sakaka city, is an example of the kingdom's commitment to renewable electricity. Built in 2020, it was the first utility-scale solar power project in Saudi Arabia, and it paved the way for future larger-scale renewable developments. It has a capacity of 300 megawatts, and it also achieved a record-breaking low levelized cost for electricity of just 2 cents per kilowatt hour, demonstrating the economic viability of solar energy in the region. Glasspoint's team in Oman refers to a technology and project developed by Glasspoint Solar, utilizing concentrated solar power to generate steam for enhanced oil recovery in the Amal West oil field of Oman. And below us we can see an array of large curved mirrors that focus sunlight onto boiler tubes filled with water, and that energy boils the water into high pressure steam for enhanced oil recovery. And the mirrors are housed in a large agricultural greenhouse, protecting them from wind and dust whilst creating a controlled environment for efficient steam generation. System operates closed loop to conserve water, with produced water from the oil field reused as boiler feed water, minimizing freshwater consumption. It has a capacity of 7 megawatts thermal and supplies energy to Petroleum Development Oman.
Now we land in Africa, which is as a region has some unique electricity and energy supply challenges amongst its 54 countries. Here in Africa, the numbers regarding basic access to energy is stark and speaks to the challenge where 600 million or 43% of the total population are without electricity and 970 million or 70% are without access to modern cooking fuel. At the same time, the north and south of the continent is among number 1 globally for solar potential, with some of the best sunshine and the opportunity to harness the sun for energy independence and access, as noted in the headlines. Today, across Africa, solar supplies 1% of primary energy and 3% of electricity. The news headlines also tell the story of the boom in solar expansion in grid, off-grid, and microgrid in Africa, in Egypt, South Africa, Zambia, and Nigeria and Angola. So Andy, let's tour Africa's solar landscape.
Solar will play a very important role in energizing and electrifying Africa. Mary, the sheer simplicity of solar, the abundance of sunshine, the presence of China in Africa is likely to result in very rapid growth of solar. And below us we see African solar farms. Let's visit 5 of those to look at different aspects of solar power on the continent. Morocco has very ambitious renewable energy plans, and Noor solar power station at the town of Ouarzazate below us is an example of that. And we see the world's largest concentrated solar plant with molten salt storage and other storage built in 4 phases. 160 megawatts phase 1 with 3 hours of heat storage. You can see that. You can see the parabolic troughs. 200 megawatts phase 2 with 7 hours of heat storage, more parabolic troughs. And then 150 megawatts phase 3 with 7.5 hours of heat storage, concentrated solar in a heliocentric arrangement with mirrors. And then on the far right, we can also see 72 megawatts phase 4 of photovoltaics. And together, this plant has 3,000 megawatt hours of storage equivalent to 6 hours. Quite stunning. Norwegian power producer Skatec in 2024 energized one of the world's largest hybrid solar and battery projects in Kenhardt in South Africa. It combines 540 megawatts of solar capacity with 225 megawatts and 1,140 megawatt hours of battery storage capacity. And under a 20-year power purchase agreement with Eskom, it provides 150 megawatts of dispatchable power to the grid every day from 5 in the morning till 9:30 in the evening. This is ambitious and this is world scale. The Benban solar park in Egypt is Africa's largest solar farm and the 5th largest in the world. And it makes sense too, with the area having a solar potential of 6.3 kilowatt hours per square meter per day. It's a big part of the country's Nubian Sun's feed-in tariff program, which aims to encourage more businesses to invest in renewable energy initiatives in the Sahara Desert. The capacity is 1,650 megawatts, and as we can see, they rotate on a single axis to follow the sun. Nigeria faces persistent power supply challenges due to inadequate generation, aging infrastructure, poor maintenance, fuel shortages, and frequent grid collapse. So most customers make their own arrangements. Bayero University in Kano installed solar with backup generators and storage, and below us we see 7 megawatts of solar, which provides Bayero with a degree of energy independence and self-reliance. Kenya also currently faces several power supply crises, national blackouts, regional power outages, and rapidly rising electricity prices. So Devki Steel sought its own solution, and below us we see their solar installation. It's the largest rooftop solar plant in East, West and Central Africa. It is installed at their Ruiru plant with a capacity of 4 megawatts at peak, and it significantly boosts their clean energy generation.
From sunny regions in Africa, we head north to Europe, which is not equally solar endowed, where solar provides 2% of primary energy and 7% of electricity. News headlines speak to solar power penetration and related themes of solar power surpassing coal in the EU for the first time, which technically holds for the EU, but not all of Europe. We see China's role as a major PV panel supplier to Europe, with half of its exports shipped to Europe. We also see implications of slowing demand in countries like Germany as a crucible for recent challenges in Europe's solar energy sector. In particular, in Germany, a significant downturn in consumer demand for residential solar panels has led to numerous bankruptcies and layoffs, threatening the nation's ambitious climate targets. So with that, Andy, let's visit solar in Europe.
Despite the fact that Europe has poor sun, it has very significant installed solar capacity. And below us we see the large solar farms in Europe. Availability of land is limited, so significant installation of rooftop solar is taking place, especially in Germany. At the end of 2024, Europe had 338 gigawatts of solar capacity in operation. Let's visit a few solar farms in Europe. Europe's largest solar farm is here in Witznitz near Leipzig in eastern Germany on a former lignite open pit mine. It has a capacity of 650 megawatts. And as Mary said, most of these solar panels come from China, in fact from the Jinko solar factory that we saw earlier. 600 megawatts of its capacity is contracted to Shell, in which it will then sell half onto Microsoft to help meet Microsoft's commitment of having 100% supply of renewable electricity by 2025. Rooftop solar is really big in Germany, and below us we see the Metro Logistics Center in Marl with its 18 megawatts of rooftop solar. And the photovoltaic system generates enough electricity to meet Metro Logistics' own needs at the site and feed surplus back into the grid. The first photovoltaic power plant in France and the largest floating solar power plant in Europe has been opened in Pure-Lenc in France, a community of 5,000 people. And the 50,000 photovoltaic panels that we see floating on a former quarry, which has been converted into an artificial lake and produces 17 megawatts. One of the largest solar farms in France is Toul-Rosieres, and we see below us the 300,000 photovoltaic panels sprawled across 125 hectares of abandoned US and French Air Force base. And this solar farm has been integrated with existing agricultural land, and sheep graze beneath the panels as they generate 115 megawatts owned by EDF Renewables. Despite generally poor sunshine in the UK, the growth in solar in the UK is quite significant. And here we see the rooftop solar at Bentley Motors in Crewe, and that rooftop solar generates 10 megawatts, which makes it the largest single rooftop in the UK.
Before we leave Europe and the UK, let's make a side visit to solar in the UK, where we see installed capacity of 17 gigawatts. On average, this capacity generates 1.5 gigawatts with a low daily load factor and high seasonality from sunny summer and late spring months to darker winter and late fall months, as we can see on this chart. This all reinforces that despite the surge in solar capacity, additional firming, shaping, and storage resources are required to address the intermittency of solar and deliver the profile needed for demand, as envisioned by the UAE's $6 billion project of combined storage and wind that we profiled in the Middle East headlines, which seek to deliver 1 continuous gigawatt. Across the Atlantic from Europe, we arrive in the US, where solar currently supplies 2% of primary energy and 6% of electricity. The news headlines speak to a solar industry which has been surging with major capacity additions of PV capacity and expectations for solar to comprise half of capacity additions in 2025. Combined with the strong momentum of capacity additions, the U.S. solar panel manufacturing is finally thriving, with First Solar, Q-Cells, and Silfab Solar as the largest producers, and with innovation in the next generation solar cells that are expected to be fully recyclable. However, the U.S. remains reliant on wafers and ingots, mainly from China and Southeast Asia, and with related uncertainty on ongoing support under the Trump administration. So, all this momentum could be derailed with concerns about new tariffs and the elimination of incentives, increasing solar installation costs and decreasing funds for innovation. So, as we discussed in our recent U.S. energy focus tour, dark clouds present that could derail solar's surge. Andy, let's explore solar in the U.S. landscape.
The installed solar capacity in the United States is now at 165 gigawatts in operation, and it's prolific in the Mojave Desert, but also in Texas and the Sunshine State of Florida. The Inflation Reduction Act offered very, very significant benefits in terms of solar power, and time will tell whether that's continued in the Trump administration. Mary, no area in the United States has seen growth in solar like the southern Mojave Desert in California. And in the 2 white blocks below us, we see the many solar farms in operation and under construction as an example of that. It is truly world scale. Arizona also has great sunshine, and below us we see the 11 Mile Energy Center. It includes a 300 megawatt solar farm and a 1,200 megawatt hour battery storage system developed by Ørsted of Denmark, operational since October last year, and now supplies electricity to Meta's Mesa data center. Rooftop solar is also growing very rapidly in the United States. Here we see the Westmont rooftop solar in San Pedro in Los Angeles. It is the world's biggest rooftop solar, spans 50 acres, 50,000 solar panels, generates 16 megawatts. And importantly, it also serves as a testing ground for cutting-edge solar technologies, piloting smart grid systems and various energy storage solutions.
We now finish our solar tour in Chile, one of the most endowed solar regions, and see the tracks that Chile is making in solar penetration of 7% of its primary energy and 18% of its electricity. In the headlines, we see that in this growing penetration, where solar PV leads Chile's renewable energy growth, many associated issues of higher penetration levels are rearing, including curtailment and the increased need and pace of energy storage. So let's visit solar in Chile.
Chile has wonderful solar conditions, as we saw on the map at the beginning of our tour. And the Atacama Desert has unlimited space for solar. A north-south transmission system is in place, but getting to be quite congested. And below us we see the solar farms being built north to south along the spine of the country. Let's visit 2 solar farms in the Atacama Desert. The Campos de Sol solar farm here in Chile is in the Atacama Desert, and at 570 megawatts, it ranks amongst the largest operating solar farms in South America. But Mary, even developing solar farms in the Atacama comes with its own environmental and social challenges. And this project actively involved local communities, offering educational programs, employment opportunities and skills training to promote sustainable development. It has incorporated measures to minimize water usage, to protect the surrounding Atacama ecosystem, and to manage waste responsibly. But nevertheless, critics highlight the fact that the land footprint is vast in a very ecologically sensitive Atacama Desert, potentially impacting biodiversity and disrupting the migration route of desert species. It also employs water-saving measures, but critics question the overall water usage in a region where water is just so scarce. The Guanchoy solar farm boasts several extraordinary features, but it also has its own share of controversies. It has a capacity of 398 megawatts. Its grid integration is quite challenging. But this gives us the opportunity to just look at some of the technical challenges of operating solar farms in the Atacama. The extreme heat affects solar panel efficiency. Ultra high UV radiation accelerates panel degradation and material wear. Dust accumulates on the panels, reducing their efficiency and requiring frequent cleaning. And there are, as I said earlier, grid stability challenges which arise from the variable solar power generation being integrated into the system. World electricity installed solar capacity broke the 2,000 gigawatts or 2 terawatt level in 2024, and that growth has been quite spectacular. The availability of solar panels will not constrain the installation rate, so time will show if the availability of land or transmission constraints or shortages and delays in the balance of plant, environmental approvals, societal objections to even more solar, or the US and other withdrawals from the Paris Agreement will interrupt this spectacular growth curve. And if we look at world electricity generation by source, we see that solar is now at 6%, achieved in a period of just 20 years. And spectacular as that growth has been, also that we saw on the previous image, it is the fastest growing source of new electricity, but it is still the smallest contribution, smaller than coal, smaller than gas, smaller than nuclear, smaller than hydro, and also wind.
Final look at solar in the world energy supply. We conclude on takeaways framed in the energy trilemma for today and within the next decade. Starting with the security reliability element, today solar constitutes 6% of global energy at 2,000 terawatts. China dominates panel manufacturing with growing Western protectionism, and panel capacity is greater than demand. For the 2030 to 35 period, we see doubling of installed solar capacity in the next 5 years to overtake wind, but with the needed battery capacity to round out the intermittency of 4,000 terawatts, not following solar's pace of penetration. And on the supply chain front, we see non-Chinese manufacturing will grow. If we look at the environmental element, today solar installations are contributing significant reductions to GHG emissions. On the broader environmental front, solar deployment creates battles for land in India, Japan, USA, Europe, and an increasing footprint in the desert. A growing concern is emerging about manufacturing and end-of-life waste. For 2030 to 35, we see an ongoing preference for solar power to onshore wind, given the greater invisibility and positive association with sun, and with associated permitting easier, such that solar overtakes wind in penetration. Also, we see ongoing technology innovation to introduce more flexible urban conducive cells and address rising recycling challenges in circular design and disposal. On the price element, today, while the megawatt cost of solar has rapidly declined, the price impacts to electricity consumers of 2,000 terawatts of solar introduced amid a much lagging pace of needed battery storage has distorted prices and introduced more volatility into electricity market operation. For the 2030 to 35 period, what we see is storage and backup costs become visible in the prices, and availability of land becomes a constraint. So with those takeaways, we thank you for your interest in our global solar tour, and hopefully we have left you with a sense of the potential, the current direction of travel, and the landscape for growing solar penetration. Thank you again.